The night sky was glowing red. Reed stood on the edge of his small wooden farm, staring at the flames lighting up the far mountain ridge. A loud roar echoed in the valley, deep, angry, inhuman. The villagers had already locked their doors. Everyone knew what that sound meant. A dragon had fallen, or worse. A dragon had come to die. Reed was no hero. He was just a quiet man, living alone since his parents passed. He grew vegetables, kept chickens, and avoided trouble. But something inside him wouldn't stay still tonight. Something was calling him. Grabbed his lantern and knife and started walking toward the smoke dot. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, the air was hot and thick. Trees were still smoldering. Ash floated like snow. The ground was black. In the distance, something large lay motionless, half covered by rocks. A massive dragon. Dead. Its silver scales were cracked. Its wings spread like burned cloth. Reed felt his knees go weak. Even in death, it looked powerful, dangerous, but it wasn't moving. He turned to leave, but then heard something. A soft, high-pitched chirping. Like crying. He followed the sound behind the corpse to a fallen tree. There, in a small nest of broken wood and glowing embers, were 3 tiny hatchlings. They weren't like the stories told in the taverns. They weren't monsters. They were small, about the size of cats, with soft wings, big golden eyes, and shaking bodies. One tried to growl at him, but its voice cracked. The second limped behind the first. The third didn't move at all. Reed stood frozen. He should run. He should report this. He should tell the town guard, but he didn't. He knelt down slowly. "It's okay," he whispered, unsure if they understood. They didn't move, but they didn't attack. His heart thumped. "I'm not going to hurt you." He took off his jacket, gently wrapped all 3 hatchlings, and lifted them into his arms. Their skin was warm, and their tiny hearts were beating fast. Reed returned before sunrise. He hid them in the cellar beneath his house. He filled a small box with old blankets and lit a single candle. The hatchlings huddled together, too weak to speak, too tired to move. He brought them goat's milk. At first, they refused it. But when one licked a drop, the others followed. They drank. They slept. He watched them. And for some reason, he smiled. By the next day, the town was buzzing. "Did you hear? A dragon crashed in the hills. Biggest corpse they've seen in years. Scouts say it was the silver breed, the most dangerous kind. Any survivors? None." Reed said nothing. He just bought more goat's milk and returned home quickly. Days passed. The hatchlings began to move. One tried to fly and crashed into a broom. Another burned his bookshelf by sneezing. Reed should have been scared, but he WSN single quotes T. He gave them names: Zira, the brave one with black stripes on her wings; Eker, the smallest with the loudest voice; and Thorn, the quiet one with a scar over one eye. They followed him around the cellar. They played with his boots. Sometimes they even curled up beside him when he sat. But Reed knew one thing for sure. If anyone found out, if even one neighbor heard a screech or saw a wing in the window, they would call the dragon hunters. The town didn't forgive, and they never spared. Dragons. One stormy night, while Reed was feeding them, Zira looked straight into his eyes. Her wings were growing. Her claws were sharper. Her stare was deeper. She tilted her head and spoke. Not in full words. Just one. "Reed?" He dropped the spoon. Zira repeated softly, "Reed." He gasped. "You know my name?" She blinked. "Reed, safe." His chest tightened. He knelt beside her, touched her snout. "I'll keep you safe too." But outside something was watching. A shadow moved in the trees. Golden eyes blinked once, then disappeared into the night. Zira burned the ceiling. Not by accident. Not this time. It started with a simple cough, then a spark, and then a stream of blue fire shot from her mouth and scorched the cellar roof. Reed jumped back, dropping the wooden bowl of milk. Smoke filled the room. Iker squealed. Thorn flapped in panic. But Zira stood still. Eyes wide, lips curled in something close to a smile. "I did it," she whispered. She wasn't a helpless hatchling anymore. That morning, Reed sat at the kitchen table, his face in his hands. "We're growing too fast. He had cut a secret tunnel from the cellar to the woods. He made them practice flying only at night. He kept them hidden, quiet, fed, but now their fire was waking up. Their wings were stretching. They were becoming dragons. And dragons couldn't stay hidden forever, especially not when the world outside was hunting them." Reed walked back down into the cellar. The walls were charred from last night. The hatchlings looked guilty, except Zira. She stood proudly. "You can't burn this place down," Reed said softly. "Someone will see." Zira tilted her head. "Why do we hide?" Reed paused. "You know why." Zira stepped closer. "You say we bad. But you feed us, sleep near us. You love us. I never said you're bad. Then why do humans hate us?" Reed looked away. "I don't know." Zira's voice softened. "I want sky. I want sun," Reed sighed. "I want that too, Zira, but not yet. Not like this." That evening, a cry echoed through the valley. A human child had fallen into the river near the old bridge. The current was too strong. Villagers screamed for help, but no one jumped in. Zira, hiding in the treetops, heard it all. And before Reed could stop her, she leapt from the shadows and flew. Her wings weren't perfect. They wobbled, her fire sputtered. But her body sliced through the air like she was born for it. She reached the river. She dove, and she saved the child. She pulled the small boy onto the rocks with her claws. She nudged him toward the villagers. She waited. And what did the people do? They didn't thank her. They screamed, "Dragon! Monster! Kill it!" Someone threw a stone. Another raised a crossbow. Zira backed away, confused. She opened her wings, shaking with fear and rage, and flew back into the sky. She returned hours later, bruised, angry. Reed patched the scratch on her wing. "I tried to help," she said. "I saved the boy." "I know," Reed said gently. "They hate me." He nodded. "But why?" Reed looked her in the eye. "Because they fear you." Zira said nothing. That night, Reed sat by the fire alone. He felt it in his bones. This couldn't last. Not the cellar. Not the hiding. Not the lies. And certainly not with Zira becoming stronger, smarter. She was no longer just a dragon. Hatchling. She was something more. The next morning, before dawn, Zira left. Not through the tunnel, not quietly. She walked right out the back door and disappeared into the misty forest. Reed searched everywhere. The woods, the river, the burned dragon's grave. Nothing. Then, just before sunset, she returned, but she wasn't alone. She came with a whisper of wind and a pulse of heat, and behind her, hovering in the air, was a massive figure, scaled, ancient, eyes glowing gold. A dragon unlike any Reed had ever imagined. It landed softly behind Zira. Its wings shimmered like silver fire. Reed stumbled back. The great dragon looked at him and said, in a deep, echoing voice, "She is no longer yours. Human." Reed's heart froze. Zira stepped between them. "No. He is my family," the elder dragon growled. "He is a human. They hunted us, burned our nests, killed your mother. You owe him nothing." Zira spread her wings. "I owe him everything." The elder paused. Then said something Reed would never forget. "She is the blood of the last queen." The wanted posters didn't have his face. They had his name and one word in bold red ink: Dragon Trader. Reed stood in the shadow of the village bakery, watching the guards staple another notice to the wall. A few villagers peeked from their windows. No one dared speak. No one dared help. By now, everyone had heard the rumor. a human man raised dragon hatchlings. He fed them, trained them, protected them, and worse. One of them had grown wings and dared to speak. Back at the house, Zira paced the cellar, angry flames flickering from her throat. "They want you dead," she hissed. "Because of me," Reed tried to stay calm. "No, because they're scared. They're stupid. They're human." Zira bared her teeth. "You're human." "I am," Reed nodded. "But I know what's right." She blinked. "So do I." Suddenly, Iker crashed into the cellar, panting. "I heard them talking." "Who?" Reed asked. "Hunters, in the tavern. They said they'll pay gold for your head, and double if they get me." Zira growled. Thorn stayed silent, his small tail curling tight. Reed looked at the hatchlings. No, not hatchlings anymore. They were growing fast, stronger, louder, braver. It wouldn't be long before someone followed them home. He stood up and said quietly, "Pack what you can. We're leaving tonight." But it was already too late. That night, as they tried to sneak into the forest, they were ambushed. Not by townsfolk, not by soldiers, but by dragon hunters. 6 of them, clad in black iron, faces masked, weapons glowing red hot. One of them threw a net coated in some kind of glowing powder. Zira dodged. Iker wasn't fast enough. He screamed as the net wrapped around him, pulsing with energy. He fell, twitching, wings burned, eyes wide in fear. "No!" Thorn shouted, but Reed grabbed him, pulling him back into the bushes. Zira wanted to fight. Her mouth was already glowing with fire. Reed tackled her. "You'll die. He's still alive. They'll kill him. They want him alive. They need to show the town a trophy." Zira's eyes burned. Then slowly she nodded. They escaped, but Iker didn't. The next morning, the village square was packed. People pushed forward, excited, scared. In the center stood a steel cage. Inside it, tied, burned, and gagged, was Iker. His small horns were chipped, his wings bound in chains. A soldier shouted, "Behold, the dragon man's pet, the evidence of betrayal." Cheers and gasps filled the air. Reed watched from a rooftop, his fists clenched. Zira sat beside him, hidden in a cloak of leaves and dust. She trembled with rage. "They're going to burn him," she said. "No," Reed replied. "They'll wait until sunset. They want a show." Zira looked at him. "Then let's give them one." That afternoon, Reed snuck into the town library, a place most had forgotten. He found what he was looking for, an old war book. It described anti-dragon weapons, capture methods, and weaknesses in hunter armor. Meanwhile, Zira flew to the mountain pass. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was looking for an army, and she found him again. The elder dragon. She bowed this time. "Please." He watched her for a long time, then said, "You want to rescue the little one, for a human's sake?" "I want to rescue my brother. And would you burn a village to do it?" Zira didn't blink. "Not if I don't have to." Back in town, the sun was setting. Torches were lit. The execution stage was being built. People clapped. Children pointed at the cage. Iker didn't move. Then, everything went dark. Clouds rolled in black and thick. Wind howled, and from the sky came dragons, 3 of them. Zira led them. Reed stood near the stage, dressed as a merchant. When the first guard screamed, "Dragons!" panic exploded. People ran. Guards raised their weapons. But Zira didn't breathe fire. She landed on the stage, walked up to the cage, and melted the chains with a controlled flame. Iker collapsed into her arms. One soldier charged her. She didn't even move. Reed tackled the man from behind and knocked him cold. Zira looked at Reed. He looked at her. And for a second, the world stopped. Then Zira whispered, "This is war now, isn't it?" Reed didn't answer. He just pulled her and Iker into the alley and ran. The cave still smelled like ash and sorrow. Reed stood before the burned corpse of the mother dragon, the same one he had found long ago on the night of fire. her silver bones still shimmered faintly, even now. Her wings were folded like a resting bird. But her face, frozen in death, looked peaceful. He wasn't here to mourn. He was here because Zira told him to come alone, and because something inside the dragon's chest was glowing. Back in the forest camp, Iker lay curled beneath a thick blanket. His wounds hadn't healed. His tiny chest rose and fell with weak breaths. Thorn stayed close, eyes full of fear. Zira watched the sky. Reed should have returned by now, she whispered. She wasn't sure if she was worried or angry. Reed knelt by the dragon skeleton. The glow came from deep inside her ribs, a crystal, the size of his palm, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Carefully he reached between the bones. It was warm, but the moment his fingers touched it, the cave lit up. A memory. No, a vision flooded his mind. He saw the world before the war, when dragons flew over oceans, not hiding in shadows. When the silver breed ruled the skies. When humans and dragons spoke, traded, even danced beside fire. And then he saw the betrayal. A king, a stolen egg. A dragon queen murdered in her sleep. The vision vanished. Reed collapsed to his knees. Shaking, he clutched the crystal. It wasn't just glowing. It was speaking. She is the last. Protect her. She must choose mercy, or all will burn. When Reed returned to camp, Zira looked up sharply. What happened? Reed didn't answer right away. He just handed her the glowing crystal. Zira froze. This is Dragonheart. Only our queens hold it. It came from your mother, Reed said quietly. Zira's hands trembled as she held the crystal. It pulsed once, and for the first time in her life, she felt her mother's voice. She gasped. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She left it for me, she said softly. She knew I'd come back. She also left you a choice, Reed said. Mercy or fire. That night, Zira sat alone. The forest was silent. The stars hidden behind clouds. She could hear Iker's shallow breathing nearby. She looked at the Dragonheart. She had saved her brother, but now the humans had declared her their enemy, and the king had sent a letter to every province. All dragons are to be hunted and killed on sight, and the man who raised them is to be burned alongside them. At sunrise, a silver hawk landed near their camp. It wasn't a normal hawk. It was a message bird from the old caves, the last sanctuary of free dragons. The scroll tied to its leg was from the elder dragon. Zira read it aloud. The time has come. You are no longer just a hatchling. You are the flame in the dark, the queen without a throne. If you wish to command us, say the word, we will follow. Reed stepped forward. Zira, don't make a decision out of anger. She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. They took my brother, burned our home, called you a traitor. What else do I need? Reed didn't flinch. A future. War is our future. No, Reed said. You decide what comes next. Not them. Zira was silent for a long moment, then said, I will speak with the elder, one last time. She flew to the mountain peak that night. The elder was waiting. He saw the crystal around her neck. He nodded. She gave it to you. You're ready. I don't want to destroy them, Zira said. I want to save what's left of us. But they will never stop fearing you. Then I'll give them a reason to respect me instead. The elder tilted his head. What do you ask of us, Queen Zira? She paused, then said, prepare, not for war, but for something greater. But while Zira stood on the mountain, deciding between fire and forgiveness, the king's army was already moving, and Reed's name was now on the top of their kill list. They didn't wait for sunrise. The king's men came in the cold dark, just before dawn, when even the birds were asleep. Dozens of soldiers, silent, deadly, marched into the forest with firebombs, steel nets, and silver-tipped spears. At the front of the column was a man in black armor. Commander Halle. He didn't come to arrest Reed. He came to end him. Reed was already awake. He had felt it in his chest like a pressure. A storm waiting to explode. He stepped out of the tent, barefoot on wet leaves. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "She's not ready." Then the forest began to burn. The first explosion tore through the trees like thunder. The second lit the sky orange. The camp scattered. Thorn screamed. Iker tried to stand but fell. Reed grabbed both of them and ran. "Get to the cave," he yelled, but the path was already cut off. Soldiers were everywhere. Reed raised his arms, shouting, "I'm the one you want." But they didn't stop. They were under orders. No one leaves alive. Above the smoke, a shadow passed over the treetops. Zira. She saw everything from the air, the flames, the screaming, Reed trying to shield her brothers with nothing but his arms. And something inside her snapped. She didn't roar. She didn't cry. She simply folded her wings and dropped. Commander Halle looked up too late. Zira slammed into the ground like a meteor, crushing 3 soldiers beneath her. She rose, wings flared, eyes burning bright white, and then she screamed. It wasn't just a roar. It was a command. "Call," and the sky answered. Dragons came from the north, the east, the deep valleys. Not hundreds. Just 7. But they were enough. They didn't destroy everything. They chose targets. The flame they breathed was controlled. The humans fought back, but they weren't ready for this. Not this kind of power. Not this kind of precision. Zira moved like a storm, carving paths through fire and steel. But she didn't kill anyone who dropped their weapons. She let the terrified flee. She landed before Reed and the others, shielding them with her body. "I told you I wouldn't burn the world," she said, voice shaking, "but they forced my hand." Reed stared at her. There was blood on her wings, ash on her scales, but her eyes still the same. "You didn't burn the world," he whispered. "You saved it." Across the battlefield, Commander Halle stood alone. He had lost, but he wasn't done. He pulled a dagger from his belt, silver and poisoned, and charged straight at Reed. Zira turned too late. The blade was inches away until a massive tail slammed into Hale's chest, launching him into a tree. The elder dragon stood behind him. Silent, cold, watching. The forest was quiet again, just smoke and broken steel. Zira looked up at the sky. That at Reed. "It's over," she said. Reed shook his head. "No. This was just one army." Zira frowned. "But you showed them mercy," he added. "Others might see that." Zira didn't speak. She just looked at the crystal glowing around her neck, and in her mind, her mother's voice whispered, "You are the flame in the dark, but you are also the light." That night, the dragons didn't celebrate. They buried their dead. Reed cleaned Iker's wounds. Thorn sat beside him, finally speaking after days of silence. "She's becoming something more, isn't she?" Reed nodded. "She's becoming a queen. And far beyond the mountains, in the capital." The king received the report. He read it once, then again, then tore it in half and said one word: "Burn them all." Asterisk. The cave walls shimmered with blue fire. Zira stood alone in the center, the dragon heart crystal floating just above her chest, spinning slowly, glowing brighter with every second. Her eyes were closed, her wings were still, but inside her, something ancient had begun to stir. The ritual had started, the awakening had begun. Outside, the skies were quiet, but the silence was not peace. It was the breath right before the scream. Reed sat by the campfire with Iker and Thorn. The boys were recovering, but their eyes held a new kind of fear, not of humans, but of what Zira might become. "She's been inside that cave for hours," Thorn whispered. "She's speaking to the ancients," Reed said. "The dragons who ruled before memory, before war, before hate. Will she come back the same?" Reed didn't answer, because deep down, he wasn't sure. Inside the cave, Zira saw visions. She saw her mother's face, soft, glowing with silver light. She saw the first queen, wings made of starlight. She saw cities in the clouds, humans and dragons living side by side, dancing around shared fires. Then, she saw the betrayal, the burning eggs, the screaming children, the dragon. Hearts shattered by steel. And at the center of it all, a human king, crowned in blood, smiling as fire consumed the skies. Zira opened her eyes. The crystal stopped, spinning. The flames dimmed. She stepped out of the cave, but she wasn't just Zira anymore. Her body shimmered faintly. Her voice held depth. Her wings were larger, her presence heavier. Even the wind stopped to listen. Thorin took one step back. Iker just stared. Reed stood slowly. Zira? She gave him a long look, then smiled, tired, but warm. I'm still me. Reed let out a breath. You scared me. You should be scared, she said, because the king is coming. That night, a messenger hawk arrived. Its feathers were burned, its leg broken, but the scroll tied to it still glowed with royal wax. Zira opened it. There were no threats. No lies. Just one command. Surrender the dragons, or we will erase your kind. Zira stared at the fire for a long time. Then she spoke, not just to Reed but to every dragon nearby. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending mercy will protect us. Reed stepped forward. So, what will you do? She looked him in the eye and asked, will you still stand beside me if I choose war? Reed didn't blink. Only if you fight for more than just revenge. Zira turned to the others. The king thinks we're animals. That dragons are. Beasts who burn first and ask questions later. She lifted the dragon heart crystal high. Then let's prove him wrong. The next day, dragons gathered from across the valleys. Big and small. Old and scarred. Mothers, exiles, survivors. They came not for gold, but for her. The queen, Zira, stood on the high rock. She didn't roar. She spoke, and every dragon listened. We will not burn villages. We will not slaughter the weak. We will not become the nightmares they expect us to be. But we will fight, not because we hate them, but because they've left us no choice. Reed watched from below, stunned by her power. He remembered the hatchling who once burned his broom by sneezing. Now, she commanded the skies, but even as hope swelled in his chest, a horn blew in the distance, then another, and then, on the far ridge, a sea of black armor emerged. The king's army, thousands of soldiers, tanks, ballistas, anti-dragon cannons, all marching toward them. And leading the charge was the king himself, in golden armor with a fire sword at his side. Zira stepped down from the rock. She turned to Reed. No more running. Reed nodded. Then let's stand together. She offered her wing. He placed his hand on it. 2 species, 1 family. And as the army charged, the dragons took to the skies, not to destroy, but to defend. No one spoke as the sky turned gold. Not from the sunrise, from flames. But these flames didn't fall. They rose. Zira hovered above the battlefield, her wings stretched wide, the dragon heart crystal glowing like a second sun on her chest. Across from her, the king sat tall on a steel war beast, half machine, half beast. His eyes locked on hers. Reed stood on the ground below, heart pounding, sword shaking in his hand. This wasn't a skirmish. This was the final breath before history changed forever. The king raised his fire sword. Kill the traitor, burn the queen. No mercy. Trumpets blasted. The army moved. Reed turned to the dragons behind him. Not an army, but a family, young, old, scared, brave. Zira didn't give a war cry. She just whispered, protect what loves you, and nothing else. And the dragons took flight. The first clash was silent, then everything shattered. Ballistas fired chains of lightning. Dragonfire met steel shields. Zira flew through storms of arrows, spinning like a dancer, flames trailing behind her like ribbons of gold. But she didn't kill. She disabled. She froze cannons with ice breath. She destroyed wheels, not men. She burned weapons, not bones. And yet, she was still called monster. Reed found himself surrounded. Soldier raised a sword to his back. He turned too slow, but before the blade could fall, Iker crashed into the man, knocking him into the mud with a scream. "I've got you," Iker said, panting, wings twitching. "You're not going alone." Then Thorn landed beside them, growling. Reed smiled through bloodied lips. "Guess I'm not the only crazy one today." High above, Zira reached the king. He waited for her. Mitter, riding a sky machine powered by stolen dragon flame. Their blades clashed, hers of fire. His of poison. She was stronger, but he was crueler. He slashed her wing. She roared. She bit his armor. He stabbed her belly. They spiraled to the ground, locked in a deadly dance. When they hit the earth, Zira collapsed. The king stood over her, panting, his fire sword burning white hot. "You think mercy makes you strong?" he spat. "It makes you weak. Just like your mother." Zira blinked, blood dripping from her lips. "She showed mercy to your kind," the king snarled. "And we burned her for it." Zira didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "I forgive you." The king hesitated, just 1 second. And in that second Reed struck. He leapt from behind, drove his sword through the weak joint in the king's armor. The king gasped, turned, fell. The battlefield froze. Soldiers stared. Dragons hovered. The king was dead, and he had been killed by a human. For a dragon, Zira slowly stood, body trembling. She looked down at Reed, bloodied, burned, but alive. "You saved me," he smiled faintly, only returning the favor. She stepped closer, her head lowered. Her wings folded. And in front of everyone, dragon and human, she whispered, "Thank you for raising me." That moment echoed across history. Some say it ended the war. Others say it began peace. But everyone agreed on one thing. The dragon didn't burn the man. She bowed to him. Months passed. The battlefield grew flowers. Children, no longer screamed at the sight of wings. Dragons and humans began to speak again, not with fire or weapons, but with stories and songs. Zira became queen of the skies. Reed became something stranger, a human with dragon blood in his heart. One evening, under a quiet sunset, Iker asked, "Do you think they'll ever forget?" Reed looked at the sky, where Zira flew in slow circles, leading younglings through the clouds. "No," he said, "but maybe they'll learn." And far above, Zira looked down. Her voice carried on the wind. "He raised dragons when the world wanted them dead. So we raised him back."